Donald Trump recently claimed that American households saw their incomes jump by $2,000. A solid win, right? But what if the numbers he's celebrating only tell half the story, or worse, paint a misleading picture? Beneath those headlines lies an independent report that flips the narrative entirely, revealing who really gained and who ended up worse off under Trump's policies. This isn't just politics as usual. It's a story about real people's wallets, the widening wealth gap, and why the American dream feels more out of reach than ever. The Congressional Budget Office, an independent watchdog, dug deep into the numbers and found something striking. While Trump boasts about boosting incomes, the reality is harsher for millions at the bottom. The poorest 10% of Americans actually lost about $1,200 a year. And that's mainly because crucial benefits like Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, and disability payments were cut or reduced under his policies. Meanwhile, the richest 10% didn't just get a break. They saw their income swell by nearly $13,600, thanks largely to the tax cuts Trump championed. That means while the wealthy were cashing in, lower-income families were left scrambling. It's a growing divide disguised by flashy slogans and catchy campaign lines. So if you're a working-class MAGA supporter hoping for a lift, the reality might sting. Your household budget could be tighter today than it was before Trump took office. The promise of prosperity rings hollow when the policies pushing the rich higher come at the expense of everyday Americans. Despite these harsh realities, Trump wasn't about to let the truth spoil his celebration. He took to the spotlight with a carefully chosen chart showing household incomes rising by about $2,000. But here's the catch. He dismissed official reports from the Bureau of Labor Statistics as rigged whenever they didn't favor him, cherry-picking only the numbers that looked good. There's a story that perfectly sums up this approach. Trump's love for numbers that go up, even if they don't tell the full truth. Imagine business people as chimpanzees reacting wildly to charts. They'd get upset when the numbers showed things going down, but light up when the chart flipped and everything pointed up. That's Trump's playbook. Favor the good-looking stats, ignore the rest. This manipulation isn't just a quirk. It shapes public perception and hides the economic struggles many Americans face every day. But the facts from independent sources don't lie, and soon those real numbers would be impossible to ignore. Despite mounting evidence that millions of Americans were actually struggling, Donald Trump didn't hesitate to put on a victory lap. He pulled out a flashy chart showing household incomes rising by about $2,000, a figure he declared as proof that his policies were working. But the key here is that Trump selectively used data that made him look good, while dismissing official government reports when they didn't suit his narrative. He openly criticized the Bureau of Labor Statistics, calling it rigged against him simply because the official job creation numbers were lower than his claims. When the numbers aligned with his message, he embraced them with open arms. When they didn't, he cast doubt and dismissed the data as fake. This cherry-picking of statistics is a deliberate tactic to control the narrative, keeping his supporters convinced while ignoring the bigger picture. There's an illustrative story that's been making the rounds, perfectly capturing this attitude. Imagine a group of chimpanzees acting as business executives, reacting wildly to charts presented by a human employee. When the chart shows the economy going down, the chimps throw a fit, angry, frustrated, and confused. But as soon as the chart flips and starts showing numbers going up, their mood changes instantly. They start celebrating, lighting cigars with $100 bills. This cartoonish example highlights Trump's obsession with numbers that go up, regardless of whether those numbers tell the full or truthful story. But this manipulation isn't just about optics. It shapes real-world understanding. Millions of Americans follow these numbers closely, hoping for signs of economic recovery or improvement. When the numbers are presented selectively, it creates a false sense of progress. People feel misled, and policies that hurt vulnerable populations remain hidden behind impressive-sounding statistics. Meanwhile, families struggling to pay their bills see no relief, even as the good news stories flood the headlines. In reality, the independent Congressional Budget Office report was looming, ready to expose the truth. The supposed $2,000 income boost was a myth for millions, while a small percentage reaped most of the benefits. This disconnect between Trump's narrative and the actual data would soon become impossible to ignore. If you thought a few $1,000s in extra income meant things were looking up for most Americans, inflation quietly tells a very different story, one that hits families right where it hurts, their wallets at the grocery store. The Congressional Budget Office report, while revealing the uneven gains, also coincided with rising inflation rates that make those income gains almost meaningless for many. Inflation this year hit around 3.1%, and even worse, it's still climbing. What does that mean in everyday terms? It means the basket of goods you buy each week, milk, eggs, orange juice, the staples you rely on, now costs about 3% more than it did just last year. To put it simply, the money you take to the supermarket today doesn't stretch as far as it used to. Imagine the squeeze this puts on families already juggling tight budgets. When prices go up but incomes don't keep pace, something has to give. People start cutting back on essentials, maybe skipping that extra carton of eggs, maybe going without orange juice or buying cheaper milk brands. These small sacrifices add up, eroding quality of life in ways that don't always make the headlines. Inflation is often called a hidden tax because it silently eats away at your purchasing power. While politicians debate numbers in Washington, regular Americans are faced with the harsh reality of less food on the table, higher utility bills, and rising gas prices. For many, it's not just about surviving, it's about deciding what to give up in order to make ends meet. And it's not just groceries. Inflation affects almost everything, from healthcare costs to rent and education. This growing pressure means that even families who got a small bump in income under Trump's policies might find themselves effectively poorer because their dollars simply don't buy what they used to. This hidden impact of inflation deepens the divide between the wealthy, who often have assets that increase in value during inflationary periods, and the average American household struggling to keep up. While some benefit from tax cuts and investments, others feel the pinch of rising costs daily. So while Trump was waving charts and celebrating income gains, millions of families were quietly losing ground, forced to make tough choices as inflation slowly but surely tightens its grip. But the story doesn't end here. Consumer spending, which fuels much of the economy, began to falter, signaling that these struggles were only going to get worse. Let's see how that unfolded next. When families start tightening their belts, the effects ripple far beyond the kitchen table. They shake the entire economy. Consumer spending drives nearly 70% of economic growth in the U.S., so when people hold back on spending, businesses feel the impact immediately. And that's exactly what happened. Despite Trump's rosy claims, consumer spending dropped significantly. Manufacturing slowed down, services struggled, and the whole engine that keeps the economy humming began sputtering. One of the clearest signs of this slowdown played out in Las Vegas, often called the ultimate economic thermometer. Tourism is the lifeblood of the city. Casinos, hotels, restaurants, and entertainment rely on a steady stream of visitors to keep their doors open. But over 6 consecutive months, visitor numbers to Las Vegas kept falling. In July alone, the city welcomed 400,000 fewer tourists than the same month the previous year. That's not a small dip, it's a massive blow for a city built on consumer spending and entertainment. Why the sudden drop? Several factors all trace back to policies and decisions made at the highest levels. Tariffs imposed on Canadian goods, a key market for Vegas tourism, created tension and pushed many Canadians to stay home. And it wasn't just Canadians. People from other countries, worried about immigration policies or the increased military presence in American cities during big events, chose to avoid traveling to the U.S. altogether. This drop in international visitors wasn't just a loss for Vegas, it was a warning sign for the entire country. When the top tourist destination starts bleeding visitors, it's a clear signal that consumer confidence is waning. With fewer people spending money on gambling, dining, and entertainment, the revenues of countless businesses shrank. Workers felt the pinch, hours were cut, and the economy's overall momentum slowed down. Trump's policies, from tariffs to immigration stances, didn't just ruffle feathers abroad, they hit American pockets hard. The economy began showing cracks that no flashy chart or spin could cover up, and this decline wasn't isolated. It reflected a broader malaise spreading through industries and households, hinting at bigger problems lurking just around the corner. What happened next would send an even stronger warning, signs of a recession starting to take hold. Let's dive into that next. The sustained drop in tourism and consumer spending wasn't just a short-term blip, it was part of a bigger, more alarming pattern. Economists began warning that the U.S. economy was teetering on the edge of a recession, and places like Las Vegas served as a stark warning signal. Typically, when Vegas takes a hit for 6 months straight, it's more than a coincidence. It's a reliable sign that the national economy is struggling or about to dive. But while Wall Street's stock market numbers were climbing, many experts warned that this was a dangerous bubble, disconnected from the real health of the economy. Stocks can rise on speculation, hype, and trading algorithms, but those numbers don't reflect the daily struggles of families, businesses, and workers. Underneath the flashy headlines and ticker tape, core indicators like manufacturing output, employment rates, and consumer confidence told a grimmer story. Inflation was rising, unemployment wasn't improving as expected, and key industries were slowing down. Despite claims to the contrary, these weren't the signs of a thriving economy. They were red flags flashing for policymakers and the public alike. Donald Trump, however, dismissed many of these warnings and even targeted Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, accusing him of hating America for refusing to lower interest rates and keep borrowing cheap. This political posturing ignored the complexities of fighting inflation without sparking a deeper economic crisis. The Federal Reserve faced a delicate balancing act, raising rates to control inflation without pushing the economy into a full recession. And while Trump demanded lower rates to keep markets buoyant, the underlying economic fundamentals made that impossible without serious risks. This disconnect between political rhetoric and economic reality created confusion and uncertainty. For the average American, the result was rising costs, job insecurity, and a shrinking safety net. As the economy's foundation weakened, the bubble in stock markets and investment portfolios grew increasingly fragile. Many who enjoyed paper gains faced the risk of losing it all if the bubble burst. This looming recession wasn't just numbers on a chart, it meant real hardship for millions. Jobs lost, businesses closed, and families forced to make impossible choices about their futures. But Trump's focus remained on optics, charts that looked good, rallies that energized his base, and deflecting blame elsewhere. Meanwhile, the economy's warning signs went unheeded, and the gap between political spin and economic reality widened dangerously. Next, we'll look at how this disconnect has affected everyday Americans and the broader implications for the future. Beyond charts, graphs, and political battles, the true impact of these economic shifts hits hardest at the individual and family level. For millions of Americans, the numbers translate into real struggles, from stretching every dollar to deciding which bills to pay and which to skip. Inflation means grocery bills rise, but wages often don't keep up. That's not just an inconvenience, it's a daily hardship. Parents skip meals so their kids can eat. Seniors choose between medicine and utilities. People working multiple jobs still find themselves falling behind. The dream of financial security feels like it's slipping further away. At the same time, cuts to essential benefits like Medicare and Medicaid, along with programs like SNAP, chip away at the support networks many rely on. These aren't abstract government programs, they're lifelines for families trying to stay afloat. Meanwhile, the wealthiest Americans benefit from tax cuts and investment gains, widening the economic divide. This growing inequality doesn't just affect finances, it shapes communities, education, healthcare access, and opportunities for generations to come. This isn't just a political debate, it's about the quality of life and the future for millions of people. And yet, the stories of those struggling often get drowned out by political spin and sound bites. The disconnect between those at the top and those at the bottom has never been clearer. And while political leaders squabble over numbers and blame, everyday Americans are left to navigate an economy that feels rigged against them. So what does this mean for the future? Can policies change course? Will the economy recover in a way that lifts everyone, or will the divide keep growing? These are the questions that demand answers, beyond the flashy charts and political grandstanding. Throughout all these economic shifts, one thing remains clear. Politics heavily influences how the story is told. Trump's administration often focused on the optics, flashy charts, selective statistics, and confident declarations, rather than confronting the tougher realities. This political spin isn't new, but it's especially dangerous when it distorts the truth about who's really winning and losing in the economy. When leaders cherry-pick data to rally supporters, it creates a false narrative that masks the real pain many Americans are feeling. Meanwhile, opposition voices try to expose these gaps, but the message often gets lost in the noise of partisan battles. The result is confusion and frustration for citizens trying to understand how policies affect their lives. At stake is more than just numbers on a page. It's trust in institutions, the stability of the economy, and the future of social programs that protect the most vulnerable. When policies favor the wealthy while leaving others behind, it threatens the social fabric and deepens divisions. For the average American watching from the sidelines, it's easy to feel powerless, but understanding these dynamics is the first step toward demanding accountability and change. As we look ahead, the question remains, will the economic policies shift to address these inequalities, or will the cycle continue, with more spin, more selective stats, and more families struggling in silence? The answers will shape the country's future, and the stakes have never been higher. The story behind the numbers is more than just politics or economics. It's about real lives, real struggles, and real hope for a better future. Whether you're watching from the sidelines or feeling the pressure firsthand, it's important to look beyond the flashy charts and listen to the full story. The truth is complicated. It's messy. But it matters. Because understanding what's really happening with the economy helps you make smarter decisions, hold leaders accountable, and demand policies that work for everyone, not just the wealthy few. So, keep asking questions, stay informed, and don't settle for easy answers or half-truths. The future depends on it. Thanks for watching. If you found this video eye-opening, hit that subscribe button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and stay tuned for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world.